¿Qué tal amigos de AnalizArte 83 y sean muy bienvenidos de vuelta al canal? El día de hoy les tengo la quinta y última parte de la video-reacción a la Mesa Redonda en donde participa Richard Dawkins y George Pell. Para las que no han visto las 4 anteriores partes, se las dejo acá abajo en la descripción. Para los que ya las vieron, vámonos directamente desde la parte en la que nos quedamos.
Through that, it's a video question, comes from Nick Walsh in Nyngan, New South Wales.
How can there be a compassionate God who is all-powerful and has created us, yet we suffer? Why create such a world in the first place?
Richard Dawkins, you can reflect on that and the previous question.
Well, it's hardly my business to say how could a compassionate God like that exist. Darwin himself said it was impossible for him to believe in a God who was capable of creating such suffering. He actually was talking about suffering in the animal kingdom.
Do you assume that suffering is a natural part of the human condition?
It's a natural part of the living condition. It's a natural part of Darwinian natural selection, which is one of the reasons why I was so keen to say that I didn't want to live by Darwinian principles. There is massive amount of suffering in the natural world, a huge amount.
Por esta parte estoy de acuerdo, claro. El sufrimiento siempre va a ser parte para la selección natural, siempre el más fuerte va a ser el que va a sobrevivir a costa de cualquier acción que realice. Sin embargo, el sufrimiento en las personas, entre las mismas personas, sería algo incomprendible en el caso de que hubiera un Dios, ¿no lo creen?
Of suffering, and it seems to me that's an almost inevitable consequence of Darwinian natural selection. I'm more interested, however, in what's true than in what I would like to be true. It would be very nice if there were no suffering in the world. It would be very nice if there were a sort of natural scale of justice, as the Cardinal was saying. But I'm more interested in what's true. So it's not the business of an atheist to justify the ways of God to man. It is the business of a cardinal.
Okay, let's go to the Cardinal. The question was, how can there be a compassionate God who's all-powerful and has created us and yet we suffer? Why create such a world in the first place?
I think that's probably the hardest question for us to answer.
Do you struggle with it?
Yes. If I get a chance to say, to ask a question when I die, I think I'll ask the good God, why is there so much suffering? That's a problem for us. I think the greater problem and I'll come back to the question because it's a very good one. That's the heart of what we're about. I think it's a much greater problem for the atheist to explain why there is goodness and truth and beauty. Our problem is to cope with suffering. Now, one of the unique, I think, certainly special features of Christian teaching is the value of redemptive suffering. And that is the significance of Christ suffering with us and dying on the cross. And that helps people. My first Easter after I was a priest was in the hills in Italy. Very sad village. All the men were away in Germany or Switzerland getting big money, home only for 3 weeks a year. And people were coming to confession, coming for consolation. I was even wetter behind the ears than I am now. I didn't know what to say. And eventually I said to someone, well, look, Christ suffered too. Christ had a bad run. Christ died on the cross, and we believe that through his suffering, good will eventually triumph.
Can I take it to a bigger level than that village, to the Holocaust, to genocide, to famine? If there is an omnipotent and all-powerful God, why does he let these things happen?
That's a very...
Y aquí entramos a la parte del darwinismo social que ya les había comentado con anterioridad y en otros videos, ya que en este tipo de eventos pues se dieron casos en los que por querer ser los más fuertes, los más poderosos, pues acabaron en realidad con la vida de muchas personas.
Good question, but if God is going to allow us to be good, he's got to give us freedom. There's no...
Y hay veces, abordando en lo que está diciendo, que Dios nos tiene que dar libertad, y muchos grandes pensadores han dicho que en realidad estamos condenados a ser libres.
Alternative to that, And,
But he chose to intervene at different times in history to save the Jews when they were going over the river Jordan. I mean, there are many times when apparently God has intervened in biblical times. Why not now?
well, that's, I think Revelation is complete. That's a mighty question. He helped probably through secondary causes for the Jews to escape and continue. It's interesting, through these secondary causes, probably no people in history have been punished the way the Germans were. It's a terrible mystery.
Well, I think there'd be a very strong argument saying that the Jews of Europe suffered worse than the Germans.
Yes, that might be right. Certainly, the suffering in both. I mean, the Jews. There was no reason why they should suffer.
Okay, I'm just going to. We're running out of time. I'm going to go to another question. It's on a different subject from Anita Wu.
Jesus preaches, "Love thy neighbour as thyself." So, Cardinal Pell, how can you be against giving our gay neighbours marriage rights when equality and respect are the fundamental foundations of loving and spreading love?
Y aquí pongan mucha atención porque entramos a otro tema muy controversial con muy buenas respuestas.
Well, it's quite misleading and quite unfair to suggest that Christians hate homosexuals. Christians love everybody. We believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, that it is for the continuity of the human race. We believe that men and women are made for one another spiritually, psychologically, physically. We believe that a man and a woman as a father with their children is far and away the best and most efficient and most economical system to bring up children, and governments should support it. For a homosexual couple to have a union, well and good. There's no reason why that can't be.
Can I just interpose a quick question on this? We are running out of time.
Antes de que continúen, me gustaría dar mi postura acerca de esto, y realmente yo pienso un tanto similar que el cardenal, y es que yo creo que el amor entre personas pues sí puede haber, así como amas a tu mamá, a tus hermanos, etc. Pero el hecho de pasar a un grado más, que es el matrimonio, pues ya es algo más complicado, porque en realidad formalizar una pareja como tal en la época actual es para crear una familia, entre otras cuestiones, y pues en realidad biológicamente el hombre está diseñado para la mujer, y así es como pueden procrear y hasta cierto punto pues continuar con la especie.
I mean, do you believe that homosexuality, since it's not a question of choice, is part of God's natural order?
Well, creation's messy. I think it's the Oriental carpet makers always leave a little flaw in their carpet because only God's perfect.
But sorry, you're suggesting that homosexuals are flawed human beings?
Not necessarily. But what I am saying is I don't think homosexual activity is simply the result of genetic makeup, because we are free. We can control our instincts, and like heredity and environment, a lot of this practice is learned. But whatever about it, we've got to try to support these people, show compassion. The Catholic Church has a great record there. We look after more HIV sufferers than any other non-government organisation, but we don't believe it's possible to have homosexual marriage.
I'm going to, we're almost out of time. We've got time for one more question that both of our guests can answer. It's from Catherine Chen.
As an atheist, Professor Dawkins, do you believe that believing in God for emotional support should be allowed even temporarily? Research has proven that people who believe in God has a better chance of surviving terminal illnesses such as cancer, as well as living longer when they go to church. So, do you think that believing in God is beneficial for our well-being, even if God is an illusion?
Antes de que Richard Dawkins dé su opinión, quisiera dar la mía. Y es que es muy cierto, este estudio que estaba comentando la persona que preguntó Y es que realmente el poder de la mente es inmenso y es muy probable que necesitemos muchos años para realmente poder comprender la mente. Pero en realidad el tener una creencia pues ayuda de manera simbológica a nuestra mente a superar ciertas adversidades que en realidad son muy fuertes en la vida, como estas enfermedades que mencionaba. Ahora sí, vamos con la respuesta de Richard Dawkins.
It's perfectly possible that, as you say, believing in God has beneficial effects upon health. It's possible that you're less likely to suffer a duodenal ulcer or something of that sort. But I do have to stress, I mean, that's an utterly trivial argument compared to the truth of whether the God actually exists or not. I mean, that's a really big question. It's an important question, one that the Cardinal and I would agree on. And if there is some minor benefit to health one way or the other, the evidence is not good, by the way, but even bending over backwards to suggest that the evidence is there, that psychosomatic illness may be healed, may be alleviated somewhat by a belief in God. Psychosomatic medicine is well known. Placebos work. If God is simply a placebo, that's fine. But I'm interested in whether he's actually there.
Okay, Cardinal Pell, final word, actually.
Yeah, so am I. It's a question of truth. Christians don't present God as like Santa Claus, something that a myth that's useful for children. And believing in God and being a Christian cuts both ways. More people were killed for their Christian belief in the last century than any other century, probably than all the other centuries combined. They died on principle to be faithful to Jesus. So we might get some benefits. We mightn't get ulcers. We might live a bit longer. That might have much more to do with our heredity. But we follow Christ because we believe it's the truth. I think it does bring a peace of mind. It does help us. But sometimes it gets us into... my life would be much simpler and much easier if I didn't have to go to bat for a number of Christian principles.
Have you ever regretted that you do?
Sometimes I wonder.
Seriously?
No.
Okay, that's all we have time for tonight. Before we go, let's check the final.
Bueno amigos, y hasta aquí esta video-reacción a la Mesa Redonda. Y como conclusiones quisiera agregar que tal como se da hoy en día, muchos cuestionamientos que tenemos en el mundo es muy probable que sean respondidos no solo por una sola rama, o sea por la ciencia, sino que pueden ser complementadas con la religión, por ejemplo, o con otros pensamientos muy particulares que cada persona puede tener de acuerdo a su contexto o de acuerdo a lo que ellos han adoptado personalmente. Si les gustó este tipo de contenido, déjenmelo abajo en los comentarios. Ahora sí es todo, muchas gracias, nos vemos en el siguiente video.